Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the Fast and Ominous Comic Book Vault. It's time for new acquisitions for this week. I've got 6 new issues for you, and we'll run through them as quickly as possible. The first thing I wanted to mention, though, is I'm not going to review Ninja Turtles number 16 this week. I've got it, I've not read it yet. Don't spoil it. Don't tell me anything. I really wanted to talk about this week, but I wasn't able to get number 15 when it came out last time because my store was out of it. They're still out of it. They have it on back order, and I wanted to wait until I read 15 before I did this one. So anyway, I'm really excited about it, though, because it's Slash on the cover, and he's on the cover of 15, so apparently that's a story that keeps going, and I've been wanting to see Slash in this book, and there he is, and I'm really excited about it. So anyway, can't wait to talk about that. First up this week, how about some Marvel things? Uncanny Avengers number 2. Uncanny Avengers, do you feel hypnotized looking at this cover? I love what Remender is doing with Red Skull in this, and if you didn't read the first issue, spoiler alert, but Red Skull stole Professor Xavier's brain. And I love that there is this great aftermath of what happened to Professor X in Avengers vs. X-Men, and I love this, like, crazy B-movie horror feel. I mean, maybe it's not fair to say B-movie horror, it's like, you know, B-movie horror ideas done in cool ways. So, his whole plan is merge his brain somehow with Professor X's brain and give himself telepathy, which is just what he does. And it's really menacing. It's a really creepy and twisted sort of villain plot, and there's a lot of emotional resonance to it too. It's difficult for me to just look at this as like this kind of fun, like kind of out there hilarious horror good time, because it sort of is that. Just this, you know, big smiley Red Skull holding up the Professor X's brain at the end of issue 1. I was like, yeah, it's twisted but hilarious. But it's sort of like what happened in that last issue of Daredevil, where, you know, Daredevil literally lost his head, and it was surreal, but also there was this kind of emotional resonance to it. I feel that way with this too, where Professor X is still being talked about a lot, and the X-Men, of course, are mourning, and you've got Rogue and Scarlet Witch here really kind of going at it, and of course Rogue doesn't trust her because she's the one who took away all of the mutants' powers before, and kind of mutant genocide, as it were. And there's this really cool way toward the end with a flashback to Professor Xavier that a very short flashback that I think does a lot of good for this story, that really kind of takes Rogue and Scarlet Witch and parallels them, and reminds us that there was a time where people didn't trust Rogue either. And I really loved that. Anyway, I had this fear as I was going through this that perhaps there was going to be too much mind control and too much of characters not having free will, doing things that we were supposed to think was interesting, just seeing those characters doing things even though it wasn't really their fault and they couldn't control themselves. And it very quickly got away from that, and I really appreciated that. Anyway, this issue is just as good as the first. I really enjoyed it. I also should mention, because I forgot about it, that the issue that a lot of people have been having with the idea of Havoc leading a team of Avengers is actually brought up in question here, and we have the sense that, Wolverine and Captain America button heads a little bit. And Wolverine, and it makes a lot of sense, seems to think that Captain America is far too idealistic, thinking that people will accept Havoc, considering what his brother did in AVX. And Captain America basically says, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing. This is the way to do this." And there's something that happens with Havoc that kind of proves Captain America right a little bit. And Wolverine certainly is not wrong, but there's a little bit of optimism there that I really appreciated. Anyway, quite good, and I wholeheartedly recommend people continuing on Uncanny Avengers. And next up, only makes sense to go to All New X-Men number 2. Feels like I just reviewed All New X-Men number 1, but it looks like Marvel is trying to double ship as much as they can right now, and they're putting out 2 books a month for a whole lot of titles. I feel like because most of their books are $3.99, and because it looks like maybe they're trying to make most of, if not all of their books, $3.99 with the Marvel Now initiative, and of course I don't love that, but I digress. I feel like a lot of us readers are going to have to scrutinize their books a little bit more, because you might just not be able to afford or want to pay, $8 every month for the book that you're, for a book you're reading, especially if you're not a diehard and you're not, buying a whole bunch of books. If you only want to read a couple of things, that book's got to be darn good for you to want to buy it twice a month. It used to be that the only book that they really made a big deal out of, this comes out twice a month, was Amazing Spider-Man, and it was Spider-Man, and people would pay it if it was good. But to do it with most of their titles, they're just going to have to be super, super good. Having said that, $8 a month for twice a month, I will pay for both of these books right now. They're quite good. So all new X-Men, we get the original 5 X-Men brought into the future. That happened at the end of the last issue, or rather that, I'm sorry, not brought into the future yet. We see at the end of last issue, Beast trying to convince Cyclops and the rest of the original X-Men that in the future Cyclops kills Professor Xavier, and that they need to be brought into the present to convince Cyclops to not be the way he is, and to try to change things. And so here we get that conversation, and we get Beast being really, really blunt with everyone, and just coming right out and saying, Cyclops murders Professor Xavier, and Cyclops, Beast, how could you say this to me? And a very, very tense scene, really well-written stuff from Bendis, and they come into the future, and we get to see them deal with all of the really interesting stuff that I've been looking forward to seeing them deal with, not the least of which being the scene that we all expected to see, and it didn't disappoint, with Jean Grey saying, why is the school now named after me? And of course, having to deal with the fact that she's going to learn that she dies in the future. Spoiler warning, but she's going to have to deal with that. And it's there's not a whole ton of ground covered in this issue. A lot of it really is just the novelty of. And I mean, not in a bad way. It's fun to see it. You get the sense it's validated. You get the sense that there's going to be a whole lot of story going on right after this. But a lot of this really is kind of the novelty of these characters meeting the alternate versions of themselves. And again, Jean Grey having to deal with the fact that later on she dies, and lines like, "This is how it ends for us. How do we stop this from happening?" The scene where the two Icemen first meet each other is very funny, and I just can't wait to see where this goes. I don't want to give away anything else about where it goes toward the end, but like I said, not a ton of ground being covered. A lot of it is just kind of relationship stuff, and Bendis doing a really good job of distinguishing the past versions and the present versions of the X-Men and making them all very different characters, and I'm really, really enjoying that. Let's go now on to, let's see, anything else Marvel? Yeah, let's go ahead and do the next Marvel thing. Here is Venom 27.1. Kind of sick of .1 issues. I really like this, but I don't feel like it needs to be a .1. It feels like it's just another issue in the series. I guess I've been saying this a little bit with .1 issues lately, but it really does feel like that. Is this a good jumping on point? Oh, sure. Sure it is. This is a good place to jump on. Minimum Carnage wouldn't have been a terrible place to jump on. His previous story arc, well, no, his previous story arc wouldn't have been a good place to jump on, because you need a Circle of 4, and I didn't really like it that much. This, however, is really darn good. I like this. I think Bunn is finally starting to really find a great voice for Flash Thompson, and I feel like he's really carrying on what he was doing from, or the voice that he had for this character in Minimum Carnage, and I'm happy to keep buying this book. I love how he's starting to come into his own. Now, I'm not, of course, loving the fact that he's still kind of carrying the Circle of 4 stuff forward, but at least with all the demonic stuff and with Hellstrom and everything, I mean, it's a good progression. It's just not my cup of tea. But at least in the midst of all that, he's getting back finally to the stuff Remender was doing with all of the character stuff and all of the issues of Flash Thompson still paying for his sins of the past and having to deal with problems from his parents. And of course, early on in the book, we had he had issues with his father, and that his father passed away, and he had to deal with all that. Now he's dealing with more things with his mother. And the theme of this issue seems to very much be, and I think this is probably why it's supposed to be a jumping-on point, because even if you've heard of Flash Thompson before, but you don't know what he's like in the Venom suit, and all you knew about him was he was that bully from Spider-Man, this is a good place to start for that, because it's all about that. Thematically, this issue is about Flash being a bully and paying for the fact that he used to be a bully. And it treats being a bully like being an alcoholic, which is interesting because, of course, he's one of those too. It's like if you're an alcoholic and you go into remission and you stop being an alcoholic. I mean, you stop drinking alcohol. You're still an alcoholic, because if you ever have a relapse, if you ever start drinking a lot again, you'll probably go back to that. There will probably never be a day where drinking alcohol on a regular basis is going to be okay for you. I suppose it happens for people, but for most people say that I had a family member once that was a major alcoholic, and I remember people always saying that even when you get over it, you're still considered an alcoholic. And it's like that with bullying for Flash Thompson, where he's not a bully anymore. He doesn't still bully people, but it's still very much a part of his makeup. Like, he has a temper, and hurting people is how he used to deal with these family problems and these difficulties that he had in his life. And in this book, he has to confront somebody who he used to bully in school, who still has physical and emotional scars from that, but is trying not to show it, and wants to be Flash Thompson's friend now after all these years. And I thought that was fascinating, and a really great place for this to go. There's this wonderfully emotional moment where Flash is talking about this to Peter Parker, and it's like there is a part of Flash that still doesn't understand just how much pain he caused people in high school, and how much of a bully he was. And he says to Peter, I was talking to this guy, and he seems to be okay. Of course, he doesn't know how scarred this guy really is. He seems to be okay. Was I really that bad in school? And you have this wonderful moment where Peter explains to him how difficult it was going to high school just because of him, and how there were days he didn't want to go to school, and how he would avoid going to the bathroom just because he was afraid that Flash Thompson would be in there. This is great stuff. Very, very emotional, very heart-wrenching, and it mixes that demonic stuff pretty well with this more grounded kind of character study of this damaged person. I highly recommend this, especially if you haven't been reading Venom and you're curious to see how Bunn is now that now that maybe he's coming more into his own with the character. Wonderful stuff. Next up, let's jump to Ghostbusters number 15. Don't have a lot to say about this except it's hilarious and it's quite good, and it seems like maybe this is going to be a big status quo change for the Ghostbusters. This ends off the arc with this kind of wannabe team of Ghostbusters, that the Ghost Smashers, who were obliterating ghosts, they claimed, but actually they were just scattering their energies and creating this big giant cloud that forms in this of all of this demonic ghost energy. And the Ghostbusters, of course, have to come in and save the day and fix it, and they actually get help from the Ghost Chasers, or Ghost Chasers. That was a Hanna-Barbera show in like the 70s or something? I forget. Anyway, the Ghost Smashers, because they don't just chase them, they smash them, and now they have to pay for it, and that's what the book's about. I get the sense that maybe one or more of the Ghost Smashers might end up becoming Ghostbusters, or working with the Ghostbusters again. There's one girl especially who seems to be getting on pretty well with Ray, and I kind of wonder where all that's going to go. I really enjoyed the art in this one. I really like how Schurting is drawing. I know this sounds weird, but just how this cloud is drawn, and it's just like the colors. It's just a lot of fun to look at. And anyway, that's really all I have to say about it. It's exciting. Read it. It's funny. Next up, Superman Family Adventures number 7. I'm not gonna say very much about this. I'm just talking about everything that I read for the week, and like I always say, I always get this for Jason, and my wife loves these, and I love these too. They're very funny. This, more than any issue of this of Baltazar's new series so far, feels like a Tiny Titans issue, and not in that it doesn't still have the kind of storytelling he's been doing with Family Adventures, where it's a little bit more cohesive and there's more of a running narrative through the thing, and it's not just kind of a bunch of jokes sewn together loosely, but more of the characters from Tiny Titans are kind of back here, and it's more about the little kids than it is about the adults, than it is about Superman. And also there are a lot of references to Tiny Titans in Tiny Titans, and it seems like it's trying very hard to take all that stuff and merge it into this and make it all one fun universe. And like we see the return of Bat Cow, and we have you know, stuff from the pets from the Pet Club and all that sort of thing. I love the villain plot in this. It's Toyman, who trying to get revenge on Superman for embarrassing him at the toy store because he told the lady at the counter at the toy store that he told Toyman in front of that lady that he should get batteries because he might have things that he needs batteries for at home. And Toyman's like, I know what I need batteries for. Quit embarrassing me. And for that, he wants revenge and sends everybody action figures that attacked them. That's what it's about. It's hilarious. The last thing I want to talk about this week is Batman Incorporated number 5, which shows us a hellish future in which Damian Wayne is Batman, and the Joker has struck with his last final terrifying blow, which is funny because I just recently reviewed a Batman Arkham City book that does somewhat of the same kind of thing, where the Joker is gone, but he's left one more big, terrible problem for Batman to try to solve in the, you know, one last horrific nightmare. And you kind of have that here too, where he manages to make almost everybody get on the Joker toxin, and the only safe haven is Arkham Asylum. And I love that the story in this is called, that Morrison calls this Asylum, because it's kind of this interesting play on words where it's all the crazy people are outside the asylum, and the asylum now is like is more about asylum, like the place where you go to get away from all, you know, your safe haven, the place you get away from all the terrible things that are happening to you. And it's kind of fun just to see all the future Batman stuff. Barbara Gordon is Commissioner Gordon, kind of like she is in Batman Beyond, except she's in a wheelchair. She's in a wheelchair that's like a tank and has guns on it, and it's bizarre. This whole thing, the best way I can describe it, like a lot of Morrison's Batman, is bizarre, but also fun and really gory, because this book has just been that way. So, you know, not really for kids, but I think that goes without saying at this point. This isn't just showing us a possible future and playing around in it, and I think this future is actually based in something he did in an earlier issue of something else that I've never read. I forget what that is, but anyway, there actually is a point to all this, and it's actually very, very important by the end. And I won't give anything away other than to say that it has everything to do with Damian and whether or not he can or should continue to be Robin, whether or not he should ever become Batman. Heaven forbid, and with his relationship with his mother and with Bruce Wayne, and how all that figures into everything. It's quite excellent. That's all I'd like to say about it. I really like it. And now it's time for a brand new segment on new acquisitions. We're going to go over to Dan Torrey, who's going to talk about books that I don't read. Let's take a look.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Things Captain Logan Does Not Read with Dan. This is sort of a new section of new acquisitions where I'm going to be reviewing the books that I bought that Captain Logan does not read, just so we can get some a little bit more variety on the new acquisitions. Cap and me thought this would be a pretty good idea for someone else to come in and review things that he didn't want to buy necessarily. So the first issue I'm going to be looking at today of the two that I have for you is Thor, God of Thunder #2. This one is by Jason Aaron and Asad Ribic. Initially, when I had first picked up this book and read about it in previews and stuff, I had really loved the concept. For those who don't know, who haven't been keeping up with it, in issue 1, we were introduced to 3 different Thors in 3 different periods of time that Aaron would be playing with. We had a young Thor that took place in sort of a Viking-era setting, a Thor in the present, which is, current 616 Marvel continuity Thor, and a future Thor where he's the king of Asgard. And this issue focuses mainly on the young Thor from the Viking era. And in the first issue, that was my favorite section of the stories that Aaron did in there. I really liked the Viking setting. It was a lot of fun, really different. It has a very Conan / 80s metal feeling to it. It's like gritty fantasy. That's the best way I can describe it. And it's a perfect fit for Aaron's style of writing. This takes place in a mystic world. Magic is possible. It's sort of indicative of the legends and fables of that time. For example, we have Thor sailing across the oceans with a bunch of Vikings through a mysterious fog, and there's monsters in the water. We have a fight that takes place in the skies with Thor riding a winged horse. And of course, some more talk of drinking and women that introduced us to this version of Thor in the last issue. The best way I can probably describe how I felt when reading this was you're probably going to want to start blasting the Holy Diver Dio record at full volume while you read this. It's just very similar to that in tone and feel. That's the best way I can probably describe it to you. With this one, Aaron seems to be planting seeds to explain the stark difference between the world of the past and the world of the present in terms of how high fantasy it is. I don't want to spoil very much about what happens here, but because the book's very much worth reading, it's probably my favorite Marvel Now title that I've read so far. I haven't gotten a chance to read Indestructible Hulk #1 yet, but so far this is my favorite. So all I'll say for now is Aaron's crafting a very intricate and very tightly woven narrative here that will make all 3 of the Thors in the worlds they inhabit interconnected in every way possible, if it goes the way that I'm sort of expecting it to go. He doesn't really give us any outright exposition saying what he's doing, but through the power of observation, I noticed some things that make me think the scale of the book will be ramping up to be even bigger than I initially imagined. I can't wait. What Aaron sort of tries to do with the God Butcher here is to give young Thor a challenge, which is really interesting because this version of Thor really hasn't had a challenge in his life yet, other than earning the favor of a certain famous object that we see at the beginning of the issue that I also don't want to spoil, because that's a pretty good scene as well. Thor's world is kind of rocked when he meets this guy that can challenge him in battle. He's used to just sort of conquering mortals across the earth whenever he wants, drinking, and being with women. He's not used to anything that's challenging to him because he's a god. He's essentially the perfect man in the eyes of all the mortals. So that really blows his mind, and it's going to be really interesting to see where he takes this take on Thor and sort of connects them to the others. And I have a feeling that this story will have an influence on Thor's progression as a character, even retrospectively. Like, maybe this will incorporate into how he becomes the Thor that we know today, with him growing up a little bit later on. I just think it's really great, and guys should definitely pick it up if you're a Thor fan, and even if not, if you're just a fan of high fantasy at all, I'd highly recommend this. It's a great fantasy book, and Jason Aaron continues to be one of my favorite writers working in comics right now. So there we go. Thor, God of Thunder #2. Excellent. Pick it up. All right, and the next issue we have here is Aquaman #14. This one's by Jeff Johns and Pete Woods. The last arc of Aquaman ended pretty strongly after meandering a little bit in the middle, in my opinion. There were some things that happened in the middle of the other's arc that kind of lost me, but at the end, John sort of tied everything up into this really interesting, intricately woven story of political intrigue that I really thought was interesting. So I was highly anticipating this one, not only because of that, but also because you can see on the cover here we have Ocean Master. This was supposed to be his first full appearance, but we don't really get a good look at him other than seeing him in the shadows, which is kind of strange, having him on the cover and then concealing what he looks like throughout the whole issue. I just thought it was sort of strange. But anyway, I was really excited to see him here because he's my favorite Aquaman villain. So I was really anticipating this. It's the first part of the Throne of Atlantis crossover between Justice League and Aquaman. This is the prelude. And this sort of... I knew that Johns would do a take on Aquaman and Ocean Master that I really liked. The Aquaman take I really liked, and the Ocean Master one doesn't disappoint either. It's admittedly very reminiscent of Marvel's version of Loki, and parts of his scheme in this book are almost identical to a more recent take on that character that we've seen, but Ocean Master has been portrayed as a similar character to Loki in the past, and I'm not really a scholar of DC history, so maybe Marvel's take on Loki was inspired by Silver Age Ocean Master, or both of them were inspired by the original Norse myths, or any other myths who have similar characters. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Who really knows? But I still found this take on Ocean Master to be really interesting, despite the similarities. John sort of gave us a status quo we've rarely ever seen with Ocean Master, Loki, or any other characters in fiction that are similar to this. At least in comics anyway, that I can think of. The status quo here is that Ocean Master sits on the throne of Atlantis because of Arthur. It's not Arthur sitting on the throne preventing Ocean Master from being on it. The dynamic is flipped. That's the usual dynamic, where Ocean Master is sort of going after Arthur's throne. He's jealous of him, and Arthur's the reason he can't be on the throne. Same deal with Loki and Thor. And with this premise, Johns gets to do some really interesting thematic things. He sort of uses Ocean Master as a way to examine how dangerously easy it can be for anyone in a position of power to manipulate world events in today's world and deceive their people. He pins Ocean Master as not just the king of Atlantis, really, but as a contemporary world leader of sorts, where large-scale manipulation from the shadows is possible on his part. Not all the strings attached to Ocean Master's fingers are revealed, but we do get some interesting revelations that show just how deeply some of his machinations have influenced the events of the Aquaman book thus far. And once you see some of this stuff, it'll really kind of blow your mind. I was like, whoa, at some of the reveals here. There's also a lot of talk of captains going down with their ships, the fall of great empires that take their leaders with them, and that gives this book a great sense of scale and a Shakespearean flair that I've always loved about this book since the beginning, with, you know, damaged royal families, the weight of kinghood, etc. It's a nice blend of contemporary world politics with traditional feudalistic politics. It kept me sort of interested the whole way through, because I'm really interested in that sort of stuff, and the history and what that kind of power has. What kind of effect, you know, levels of power like kinghood has on a person. I find that to be really interesting. So if you like that sort of stuff, I definitely recommend it. Art-wise, Pete Woods drew this issue, and I don't think it really holds a candle to Reyes and Prado's work on this book. They were just stellar. But that being said, I think he did a pretty good job. I can't say that his artwork here is bad. It's just Reyes and Prado are a very tough act to follow. He does do some cool things with the ocean scenes that he draws, which I think are some of the best sequences in the book, where Aquaman's underwater sort of waiting for someone to show up that he has to meet with him. And there's some really beautiful underwater sequences where you see the ocean floor covered with life and color and animals, and it's really beautiful. And then there's just some really haunting scenes of the ocean floor where it's desolate. There's shipwrecks. He does a lot of great stuff for the atmospheric aspect of this book, and adds a good amount of tone to some of the scenes. So I have to give him some credit there. I really did enjoy that aspect of his art. The character designs and the way he draws their faces and stuff weren't as strong, but I have to give him credit for the backgrounds and the atmospheric stuff. It was pretty good. So overall, I really liked Aquaman number 14 as well. It was very good. Both of the books that I read this week, the Captain Logan Did Not Read, I thought were really good. And I hope you guys, if you guys read the books, you enjoyed them as well. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, guys, on Things Captain Logan Does Not Read with Dan.
Thanks a lot, Dan, and thank you very much for watching. If there's anything you'd ever like to send me to review on the Comic Book Vault, you can always send things either to donate or to let me borrow to our P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.